10 mysterious abandoned ships. As humans, we're bound to solve mysteries. We look for answers endlessly, and when it comes to riddles, our curiosity only matches our persistence. Well, in this ranking, you'll meet some of the most intriguing remains of the human endeavor to conquer the indomitable sea that not even the most competent investigators in the world, from Japan to the US, have managed to solve. Today, we'll be looking at 10 mysterious abandoned ships. But before we enter the choppy waters and the creepy stories of these ships, remember to hit the subscribe button and click the bell icon so you can get notified every time we make a new upload. Number 10. The Carroll A Deering. To start, we have number 10, the Carroll A Deering cargo ship that successfully sailed with its crew from Norfolk, Virginia in the US to Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. However, things started to go off track when it needed to change captains in Rio after the original one fell ill. The ship had an awkward trip back to Virginia. According to a lightship keeper, a suspicious crewman reported that they'd lost the anchors while the rest of the crew seemed to be fooling around. The next day, another ship spotted the Carroll A Deering near Outer Banks, away from the regular course for its return to Norfolk, Virginia. The day after, a shipwreck was spotted, but the weather was too dangerous and kept the investigators away for 4 days. When they finally went abroad, they found food remains served as if they were getting ready for a meal, but they did not find the crew, their belongings, or the lifeboats. Everyone and everything had vanished. After a serious federal investigation to find an answer, efforts were fruitless, and the case is still unsolved. Number 9. SS Valencia. For number 9, we have the SS Valencia, a tragic paradox. In 1906, after a collision with a reef off the coast of Canada, the SS Valencia was abandoned when the crew accidentally released all lifeboats and left 136 passengers and other members of the crew to test their luck, a mistake with a terrible cost. After the incident, only 37 men survived on the remaining 3 lifeboats. Surprisingly, more than 25 years after the tragedy, the Valencia's lifeboat number 5 was found in very good condition, floating close to Berkeley Sound. That's a sad paradox. Number 8. SV Cause 2. At number 8, we have a relatively small ship that took a very short trip on its own. In 2007, a catamaran named SV Cause 2 was found drifting 88 nautical miles off the coast of Australia, from where it departed 5 days earlier with a 3-man crew on board. When the boat was found, it had some damages in one of its sails, while the rest of the ship was in perfect condition. The authorities never found the 3 men. However, they assumed they may have accidentally lost their way while trying to untangle a fishing lure caught in the boat's rudder. The rest might just be the work of the treacherous water of the Australian Sea. Number 7. The Jian Sang. Sometimes there are so many questions about a mystery that it looks like a puzzle impossible to solve. For number 7, we have this kind of riddle, the Jian Sang. There is almost no context, history, or formal records of this abandoned tanker of 80 meters in length, found by Australian authorities in the Gulf of Carpentria in 2006. The Jian Sang only had a large quantity of rice inside, with no signs of any recent human activity, documentation, or any evidence that the ship was being used for illegal activities. The investigators did not find any information about its port of registry nor its nationality, which remains unknown. Nobody can explain why or how nobody has reported or shown any interest in the ship. Number 6. Teignmouth Electron. At number 6, a powerful name for an extraordinary ship. The Teignmouth Electron was a nice 41-foot trimaran that was used by British businessman Donald Crowhurst for the Sunday Times 1968 Golden Globe single-handed yacht race around the world. After Crowhurst set sails and left England on October 31st in 1968, the ship was found alone 252 days later in Jamaica. After some research, the investigators identified some clues without any conclusive evidence. The journey was reported in great detail in the captain's log, where the investigators encountered stories about the trip, forged coordinates, Crowhurst's thoughts, and some evidence of a mental breakdown that led the authorities to think that the captain took his life. Number 5. Rio Maru. For number 5, we have a Japanese fishing boat with a lot of character. Some objects make you feel like they're alive and have their very own will. Perhaps now you're thinking about your smartphone or your tablet. On the top extreme of iron-willed things, we could put this Japanese fishing boat, the Rio Maru. The ship was mooring in Aomori Prefecture when it was hit by the 2011 Tohoku tsunami. At first, the Japanese Coast Guard believed the ship was destroyed and granted an exception to its owner regarding the requirements for dismantling or disposal of every ship, according to Japanese law. However, in March 2012, a military Canadian aircraft spotted the Rio Maru in Alaska. Unfortunately for this guy, the U.S. Coast Guard determined that it was necessary to sink the boat to prevent it from running around or becoming a hazard to other ships. So, with a noisy sayonara, the Rio Maru was fired and sank in the Gulf of Alaska. Number 4. The HMS Resolute. At number 4, we have a very peculiar ship. You might have heard that when you're an explorer of the 7 seas, you never know where you're going to end up. Well, sometimes you could even land in the Oval Office at the White House. This was the case for the HMS Resolute, or more specifically, its timbers, which were used to make the desk of the U.S. presidents since 1880. Originally, the ship was part of the fleet of the British Royal Navy and was abandoned in 1854 after being trapped in ice in Viscount Melville Sound, Canada. At that time, it was on a search expedition to find John Franklin, a British explorer who had been lost in the Arctic. After being abandoned, the ship drifted for 1 year and 12,000 miles until it was found on the coast of Baffin Island, Canada. After finding it in 1856, the U.S. Congress decided to buy and restore the ship so it could be returned to the United Kingdom as a token of friendship between the two nations. On retirement in 1879, the British government ordered a few desks to be made from the timbers of the ship, and the most notorious one was presented to U.S. President Rutherford B. Hayes in 1880 as a gesture of gratitude for the rescue and return of the Resolute. Number 3. MV Joyita. In the third position, we have a nice yacht with an exotic romantic name, the MV Joyita. Joyita is a Spanish word that means little jewel, and we can say that in this case, it was a very dangerous one. Originally designed and built as a luxury yacht in 1931 for movie director Ronald West, the ship was acquired by the U.S. Navy in World War II, only 10 years later, and in 1948, it was returned to private operation as a merchant vessel after suffering critical modifications during the war so it could be fit for logistical purposes. On November 10th in 1955, the MV Joyita was found empty with no trace of the crew. The 25 passengers that were on board, no life rafts, no captain's log, no navigational equipment, and no firearms. An investigation conducted afterward concluded that the disappearance of the crew and passengers to be inexplicable on the evidence submitted at the inquiry. Number 2. SS America. The SS America was a ship that carried many different names, as well as all sorts of passengers and crew members. Originally designed and built as an ocean liner in 1940 for the United States Lines, the America had among its crew members a couple of the notorious Dunsky spy ring that provided critical intelligence for Germany during World War II. The covert operations were stopped unintentionally when the ship was acquired by the U.S. Navy as a troop transport. After World War II, the America returned to its original purpose, after sailing the U.S.-Europe route, the Caribbean, and Bermuda for a couple decades, after falling in disgrace. During its last 17 years, the America changed owner and name several times, passing through terrible moments of shameful decadence, until it wrecked as the American Star in the Canary Islands in 1994. Today, only a small section of the boat remains visible during low tide. And now it's time for today's best pick. Some ships carried with them many different names, working through different decades and eras. They're born as some of the greatest of their times, but in the end are forgotten after enduring neglect and abuse. Number 1. SV Mary Celeste. The first position is for one of the most well-known and researched mysteries in the sea. An American merchant brigantine named Mary Celeste was found on December 4th in 1872, with minor damages and under sail, heading towards the Strait of Gibraltar, with no trace of the crew but plenty of provisions and in seaworthy condition. Until now, nobody has found any remains of the crew or logical explanation for their disappearance. The last entry in the ship's daily log was written on November 24th, 10 days before the ship was found. There, the last recorded position of the ship was close to St. Mary Island in the Azores, 400 nautical miles away from the place it was found. After a closer examination, the smoking pipes of Mary Celeste's crew were found, but the single lifeboat was missing. Although Mary Celeste's captain might have ordered the crew to abandon the ship after panicking by some minor damages, further investigation showed that the captain, Benjamin Briggs, was very competent and a seasoned sailor that could have correctly understood the type of damages suffered by the ship and could manage its repairs with no trouble at all. Most surprisingly, Captain Morehouse led the rescue of the ship, enduring several hardships and enduring a good reward for the ship at Gibraltar, 600 nautical miles further. Afterward, the ship was operated for 13 more years, until it slammed into Rochelosis Reef, next to Haiti. After an intriguing trip, we've returned to the coast safe, sailor. It was very nice to have you on board, and we thank you for joining us today at Mind Read. Come back to sail with us anytime so you can watch more amazing videos.